Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my pleasure to have Sani Abdul-Jabbar with us. Sani is a thought leader in emerging technologies, and he's an evangelist in cryptocurrency and blockchain. He's spoken at blockchain tech conferences all around the world. He's been frequently published in Forbes and elsewhere. He's constantly on the lookout for the next big thing in tech. His upcoming book, Makers, revolves around an epoch-defining question. How should people live alongside of their AI creations? Hint, he believes teaching AI human values such as compassion, empathy, kindness, etc. might be the answer. Sani heads up VezTek, a Los Angeles-based provider of software development and on-demand tech talent for blockchain and Web3 initiatives. In that role, he leads teams that build blockchain platforms for the next iteration of the internet. Sani, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephan. Glad to be here.
So we know each other from a mastermind that we're both in, a brotherhood called Metal, and we've been in Metal for a number of years now. Me, it's probably been 7 or 8, maybe more. But I'm curious to hear what is the biggest value or epiphany or connection or insight that you've received by being a Metal member?
That's a question, Stephan, I've thought about many times. I've been a member probably slightly longer than you, 9, 10 years roughly. I did not see the value of mentors and brotherhood till much later in my life. Metal actually was the first place where I realized that value. It was a light bulb moment for me. Um, I come from a culture where you're supposed to have answers for everything. You don't go to people asking for answers other than formal education through schools and whatnot. So metal gave me that. Before that, I was very active in traditional networking type organizations and events, and I would spend a lot of time and money into those. When I went to metal, I've said it many times, I went there looking for deals, but I found my tribe. Deals happened, a lot of business happened over the years, more than I could ever imagine, more than I ever generated through any of those networking events. But it didn't happen because business was first. It was brotherhood and relationships were first. And business was the byproduct of that. That was my biggest epiphany. And since then, I've found mentors, teachers, friends, brothers. I've found advice on personal business and all other aspects of my life from within this brotherhood. So that's what metal is to me.
Yep, awesome. And do you teach any like regular classes to Metal Brothers? I know there are a number of Metal Brothers who do these weekly get-togethers on Zoom. Might only be 5, 10, 20, 30 people showing up for
Yes.
those. It's mainly the Saturday get-together on Zoom where you'll get 200 and some Metal Brothers joining in for the big Saturday meeting, and there are all these amazing guests from different walks of life, TED speakers, and all that sort of stuff. But don't you have your own show during the week or something?
Yes. So those weekly master classes that our brothers are hosting, they have been a tremendous value. I host a class, or rather an open office type roundtable type conversation on Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, and it's called Startup with Sani, Scale Up with Sani, sorry, Scale Up with Sani, and it's primarily tech and Web3 scale ups and startups, the conversations that we engage in. Although it sometimes we talk about general business subjects and solving different business problems.
Well, that's a very generous thing for you to do, offering that kind of uh, essentially free coaching, office hours to your Metal Brothers, ongoing every single week. That's really cool.
You know how they say the best way to learn is to teach. It's an ongoing teaching for my own self as well, and also when we get together and our metal brothers who attend these conversations, they are experts in their respective fields as well, so I get to learn a lot. It's kind of as a give and take
Hmm.
way kind of street.
Yeah, very cool. And so when you're involved with a company, helping them to scale and implement some new, whether it's technologies or new processes, or conduct some sort of clever campaigns or whatever. Like, what sort of work are you doing as a consultant or as an expert being brought in to, let's say, a Web3 company that needs to do better marketing, or needs to improve their go-to-market strategy?
So that's a big question. There are few different types of customers that we deal with. We call them client partners. One is they come to you with a very clear understanding of what is it that they need. Many of them, they have internal technology teams, or in the context of this conversation, MarTech team, marketing technology teams, and they understand what they need. They come to us and we provide them tech or talent, whatever they need. The other type is they come to us with a problem. They don't know the solution. And we would recommend whether a Web3 technology such as blockchain and its relevant technologies, smart contracts, NFTs, etc., if they are the solution, or we need to go back to more traditional tech, that will solve their problem. But they come to us with problem, we recommend solution, and then we implement. The third kind is the most difficult kind, and that's the kind where they are the non-believers, and we have to convert them. They they would say they have a problem. We present to them a possible solution, and the response is like, "Oh, I know it's not going to work." And believe it or not, the third top biggest barrier for the new emerging technologies to be accepted and adopted in different industries, it's the people, the industry professionals. It's that group, the users, the decision makers, the people who hold the purse, or the people who run the tech in those industries. Because it's emerging tech is a new tech by definition, by nature. So we have to really advocate the new technology and really teach. And so earlier you asked me a question about teaching. This is the third group, is where I do a lot of my teaching. More than selling, we do teaching,
Hmm.
right? And so those are the three different types of customers.
Gotcha. Now, let's say that our listener is a marketing manager, marketing consultant, maybe a business owner, somebody who's not necessarily embedded in the Web3 world, all the tech around blockchain and cryptocurrencies and tokens and NFTs and all that, that's a little bit foreign to them, and they don't know how or why it would even be relevant to them in the first place in their job function, or in their organization. Could you explain why blockchain, or is it maybe just a solution looking for a problem?
Yes. And and that's a question I'm often asked. And I start with the, 20 years ago when I started working after school. Back then, digital marketing simply meant you put up a website, you run a few ads, and you just wait, and people click and customers come to you usually. Since then, things have changed. Now it's a digital marketing is not just about click and sell, click and sell. It's about user experience. It's about user relationship, and especially in B2B world where I operate, it's about providing ever increasing amounts of awareness to our potential customers. So it's an ongoing relationship thing. And in order to make that happen, you have to rely on data. Every time there's a click, every time there's a view, every time there is Twitter counts or LinkedIn counts, and other things like that. It's all data that we are collecting. Well, the challenge is that not every organization, not every person in the industry has the skill to deal with that data. So by its very nature, it's a complex thing to do. First, dealing with understanding the data, then turning that into actionable insights. And the bigger issue, overarching issue, is the reliability of that data. How do you know that it's not the bots clicking those ads? We don't. And anecdotal uh, knowledge that I have on this topic is that majority of the ads budget goes into bots clicking on things. I don't have the exact number in my mind right now, but it's a pretty large number. So how do we avoid all that? And that's a real problem. So in this case, it's not a solution looking for a problem. We know the problem. What the solution is? The solution is to take the trust factor out of the equation, because in order to bring the trust factor into that equation, am I looking at the correct data? Am I looking at the trustworthy data? Then I have to bring in third party players into the equation. Cost goes up, the speed goes down, the efficiency reduces. Blockchain gives you that ability to take out the middlemen, and now you go back to the original model where you have the user, you have the publisher, and you have the advertiser. Now you have only three players in the mix, so the data is free flowing. One example, well, you could ask that, well, in that case, how are we going to agree on terms and conditions, and how are we going to agree on what's really valuable matrix and other things like that? That all can be automated through something called smart contracts in the world of Web3. So we can bring only these three players into the mix. You have the user, the publisher, and the advertiser, and then use smart contracts in the middle and automate the whole process where these three entities, they agree on certain terms. They agree on matrix. They can agree on things like timeliness or accuracy or how to collect data, privacy concerns. Because in the Web3 world, it's the user who owns the data, not some large company sitting in the middle. So when user owns their own data, that also gives the user an ability to say whether I want my data to be disclosed or not, or how I want my data to be used. We have heard that conversation in the context of GDPR that we'll cover in a minute. But it's the power that goes back to the publisher, user, and advertiser. That's the magic of things. So the need for third parties and multiple third parties in the middle, that kind of goes out the window. That's the biggest value, in my opinion, that this technology brings to the conversation.
Yeah, but that seems like pie in the sky. Someday, hopefully in the future, we'll see that. But in the meantime, the user doesn't own their own data. If the user isn't paying anything, the user is actually the product. And so on Facebook, on all these different platforms, the user is the product and their data is what is being monetized with the advertisers. So you could say, well, blockchain is going to revolutionize all this. It's going to be great. We're going to have users owning their own data, and someday in the future, we'll have babies being born where they're given an NFT upon birth instead of a birth certificate. It'll be an NFT that includes their birth certificate and all their medical data and the government IDs and all that sort of stuff. Great. Well, whenever that happens, that will change everything. But in the meantime,
Right.
like we're not going to be blazing the trail here with the blockchain, new technology that allows people to wrestle control of their own data again. I mean, they're using one of just a couple of web browsers. They're using one of a couple of different computing platforms. They don't. There's the illusion of choice there, right? So you can't come in and say, well, we're going to change everything because the person in the front uh, gets all the arrows in their back. So given that, not that I'm trying to rain on your parade here, but given that, what's the practical application for somebody who's listening and if they are contemplating doing something cutting edge with their business and with their marketing? Does blockchain play a role?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Tell me more.
absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up this angle, because that's the that it's a new technology. Most people don't understand it. And more than that, many people don't understand the use cases of it. So the doubt or okay, what can I do with it today kind of angle, that's very relevant and that's real. And I'm glad you brought it up. Few examples that come to mind. I'll present use cases, so that might help answer your question. So you
Great.
mentioned browser. A user uses a browser. They don't care about what's going on in the background. If I tell a user, well, you're spending about $25 a month on things like bandwidth cost, your ISP cost, things like that, on just watching ads that you may or may not even care about. Well, that's, I think the typical internet package these days is what, around 70-ish dollars. So $20 is almost like one third of that, right? So if I tell you this, well, there's nothing you can do about it. But if I tell you that today you have a browser that gives you the ability to, well, on the surface it looks like an ad blocker, so it saves you that $20. But if you're like me, I use ads for research sometimes because we know that our smartphones are listening all the time. Sometimes when I want to do research, but I don't want to Google search, I'll bring my phone closer to my face and just say a couple of keywords. And the next thing I know, in all my browsers and all my social feeds, I start seeing ads for that thing. Point being that sometimes I don't want to block all the ads. I want some ads to show. Today, I don't have that option. Well, unless I'm using this browser called Brave browser. It was created by the same person who created JavaScript. And so the browser is launched. On the surface, it's called Brave, Brave. On the surface, it looks like an ad blocker, but it gives you additional control over what you want to see and what you don't want to see, and you can train it and all that kind of good stuff. So that's one use case that's available to you today. Now, if Stephan is only seeing ads that are relevant to him, then it's advertisers' money well spent. If it's just, he's seeing ads that are not relevant and he's spending his bandwidth and the advertiser is spending his money, it's money wasted at all fronts. So that's one of the things today that are available to you. The other thing is, we talked about it a little bit earlier, bots clicking on ads, money wasted. Now, this is from the advertiser's perspective or the publisher's perspective. Blockchain allows you to collect and track your data in a way that it cannot be corrupted. It's not easily possible. Everything is doable if you have enough knowledge, but it's not very easy to do. So what happens is that if I can show you the entire trail of who is doing what along the entire journey of an ad being consumed, that's money well spent. From the advertiser's perspective, from the user's perspective, from the tech perspective, it's a problem that that's plaguing the whole digital advertising arena, and it can be solved through the blockchain. But now, challenge is that there are certain things that are in certain things in the digital advertising world that are in direct conflict with blockchain technology. And I'll share one example: regulations. Regulations are evolving. I'm a big proponent of thoughtful, mindful, careful regulation. There is some knee-jerk regulating is going on as well in the world, simply because regulators don't understand the tech again. It's a new tech. It happens every time there's a new tech. But so GDPR is one of those regulations. We won't talk about regulation that's still evolving. We don't know how it's going to look like, but it can happen. The regulation changes such that we can't use this technology in the advertising space because implications around personal data. GDPR is something that we understand. It's out there. We know how it works. There are several clauses in GDPR that are in direct conflict in blockchain. So one of them is the right to be forgotten in GDPR. Blockchain doesn't forget. Blockchain, because data cannot be changed, so once it's in, if the data is on a blockchain database, it's there forever. So now there's a direct conflict between the two. Then there's another clause in GDPR that data needs to be kept in the same jurisdiction where it's collected. If you're using blockchain that is a public blockchain, the data stays on people's machines. You don't know who these people are. Now the data can go anywhere. Say there was a person in Netherlands, data was on his laptop, he traveled to the US, now the data has left the jurisdiction where it was collected. So there's a direct conflict. And there are several other clauses like that. That's another thing that we have to be mindful of. In the US, I haven't come across any direct regulatory issues between the application of blockchain and digital marketing. But in the international arena, there are some challenges, and in the U.S. too, as the new regulations are being created, they will have an impact on it. So something to be mindful of.
Gotcha. So you mentioned earlier blockchain can be a way to avoid fraudulent ad clicks. How is that currently being implemented? Who is implementing that so that it's getting solved? Is it Google? Is
So
it
there
certain
is a
advertisers?
company. So there's a concept of I think it's called BAT token, BAT, and I'm forgetting what it stands for. The idea there is every time someone interacts with a token, every time someone interacts with an ad, whether they publish it, whether they run it on their platform, whether they click it, a token is issued, and the token goes to the party that's interacting with the ad. So when that happens, even before making that happen, you need to know who is the person or entity interacting with that ad. That's the whole KYC process from the banking world. Know your customer is the term that's used. So here, no customer in this context, customer would be any entity dealing with an ad. So step one, I have to know who is this entity. It, I have to have certain level of information about this entity, the entity that's interacting, publishing, launching, clicking on the ad. And every time that happens, they are incentivized. They are sent certain tokens. And the token is called BAT.
Yeah.
So what happens is
Basic
that
attention token.
say again?
Basic attention token.
Thank you. Thank you. Basic attention token. When that happens is if we don't know who on the other side is, we cannot send that token. So the process stops right there. If it's a bot on the other side, they cannot accept tokens because we don't know them. We haven't done the KYC process for a bot. So in that case, the process is going to stop, and it helps significantly in minimizing the bot clicking of those ads. That's one example, and there are other services like that are coming into market, but this is one that came to mind right now.
Yeah, and have you tried it? Have you earned any BAT by looking at ads?
We did as a test, and then we donated the tokens back to the organization. So that's also an option. You can actually donate it back because the value of each token is not that significant. So few tokens weren't going to do anything for us anyway. So we send it back to the organization to support it and show our appreciation.
And how did you earn the tokens? Did you have to use a certain browser? Did you have to use a certain browser extension? Uh, Go visit certain websites? Like, how did that work?
Um, my some people in my team actually ran the experiment, so I wasn't hands-on on it. So I don't know the exact mechanics. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the outcome of the test?
The
Presumably
outcome of the
you had a hypothesis or some sort of objective of doing the test. Did you
Well,
achieve
the
it?
hypothesis was the first thing that I wanted to see is does it actually work? How is the user experience like? And when my associates who ran the test, they came back to us and they said, well, there was nothing different in the user experience itself. You just click on the ad. And I'm curious now, I'm going to go back and check if there was a browser extension or something. Most likely that's what it is. However, there was no change in the user behavior. So that goes back to your earlier statement when you said user is only using a browser or a few browsers and they're doing whatever they're doing. Something that we try very hard in the industry is that we try not to change the user behavior. Because the moment you ask a user to change their behavior, you're creating more friction in whatever you're trying to do. So the goal there is minimize, eliminate a need for change in user behavior and let them do what they're doing as they always do. So when we say user owns the data, it doesn't mean that user is sitting on these piles of data and they have to decide now what to do with it, because an average user doesn't have the skill set to do anything with the data, right? So the data is being collected. We know that someone did something, but we don't know who this person are, and all the KYC data is in the background. So while we say, for example, ad clicking data, that's public data within that ecosystem, of that blockchain, it doesn't mean that every user of the blockchain can actually see who did what, because the data is public, but identities aren't, right? So that's how it works. The hypothesis when we ran the bad test was, is it going to require any change in user behavior? The answer was no. Is it going to slow down the process? The answer was no. Um, we couldn't verify if, from the publisher's perspective, if they are receiving, if they're seeing any change in number of clicks, or if their ad budget ad spend, went down after they started using the service. So we don't know that part. But from the user's perspective, we didn't notice any change. It was quite seamless.
Did the user give up any of their privacy since they had to do a KYC process to be able
They
to
do.
claim their
They
BAT
do,
tokens?
because absolutely. So they have to give up they have to introduce themselves. There are some basic information they have to provide. We have to know that this person is real, and it's not a bot. Um, there is identity verification process, right? So all that kind of stuff is there, and that also makes some users nervous. Um, our people, they knew that KYC is part of the equation going in, so they didn't get nervous. But an average user would certainly get nervous when you ask them if they're personally identifiable information.
Mm-hmm. Is that personally identifiable information shared with the advertisers?
That information is not shared with the advertiser or publisher. It's shared with the blockchain itself. So it sits on the blockchain, um, and it's not public information. The challenge is the user doesn't know, because they're always going to think my information is out in the open and anybody can use it and abuse it.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to earn some tokens knowing that I'm earning them by giving away my private information to an advertiser and then start having them hassle me, sending me unsolicited text
Yeah.
messages and stuff. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So in this particular use case, yes, we need to know the user. Like any other technology, people, it's the techies who are still who are still, the more active ones in the adoption of this new technology. It is becoming more mainstream. A couple months ago, I went to my doctor and they offered cryptocurrency as one of the acceptable form of payment. In my business too, we use cryptocurrency, and when that happens, we do give information to each other. So now, in the case of BAT, when you are providing them your information, you're not giving them your name, your social security number, kind of thing. You're giving them your wallet address, and the wallet itself has KYC behind it.
Got it.
But there are, these couple of steps involved, and an average uninitiated person is going to think that there's something going on, although they are not giving their IDs and social securities and mother's maiden name kind of stuff to the advertiser. They're only giving it to wherever they have that wallet. And your wallet may be with Coinbase or some other exchange like that, and that's where you go through the full KYC process.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now,
What you give to this platform, you only give your wallet address, which is a long alphanumeric string.
yep, yep, makes sense. So there's another kind of related concept I want to talk about with you, and that's play to earn games.
Mm-hmm.
Axie Infinity is one of the more famous ones. Supposedly, there are people in the Philippines that make a good living just playing games all day, earning the tokens from Axie Infinity. I don't know if that's still the case because it's been a tough market for crypto these days. But does that concept of playing to earn somehow gamify the idea of a BAT type of token where you're confirming that you're not a bot and that you're consuming the ads seems like there's an opportunity there to make it more gamified.
The short answer is yes, and the longer answer would be why would you want to do that in this particular case? Um, Now, someone could game the system by just sitting there all day and clicking on ads to earn. So, not gamification, but gaming the system,
Mm-hmm.
tricking the system. I could sit there all day clicking those ads and earning the tokens. And that's where I haven't gone that deep into the BAT token and its algorithm. I have seen similar challenges in the get paid to respond to surveys industry. And in that industry, we actually worked with a client a long time ago. What we did, we looked at the user behavior and the click frequency and the patterns in the clicks, and we looked at how they were doing it. We have also done that actually in the banking space, where based on the user activity on the clicks and the cursor movement and things like that, we try to predict if there was a risk of fraud. So those kind of things can be done. I don't know if BAT has implemented that yet or not, but this technology is already out there.
Mm-hmm.
Based on users' behavior, you can kind of try to determine if there's a red flag.
Mm-hmm. So earlier you mentioned the Brave browser, and you said that you can train it. What are you training Brave browser to do, and how does that improve your quality of life or your user experience as a web user? And are you using it yourself, or are you just using Chrome?
I'm primarily using Chrome. No particular reason, just I guess habit. Brave I played with,
Well,
and
Google thanks you for
the
that, by the way.
okay, welcome. Um, the training part is, so one is that you can say I don't want to see any ads, end of story. The other part is where I want to see some ads. So if I'm researching a topic, I only want to allow those ads, for example, and that's the training part. I can allow those ads, and I do that in Chrome to a degree. I use different methods. I mentioned the smartphone method earlier, and also I use another extension within Chrome that does that kind of thing for me. But um, when I use this extension in Chrome, I don't know how much information I'm giving away, how much control I'm giving this extension on my computer or on my browser. When you do that with Brave, you know that the browser is designed for that purpose. And it's only taking the information that you allow it to take. And it's a very simple process. And so the change in user behavior is not that significant. I don't see it as becoming a friction or resistance in change or in learning this um, new browser or new way of working.
Mm.
The primary reason why I actually seriously considered starting to use Brave. The reason why I'm using Chrome, I think the primary reason is we are a Google Workplace company. We use all Google products, and they work very well with Chrome. They're sort of integrated into the whole experience is integrated from communication to documents to spreadsheets, design. I mean, you name it. So all of that is kind of integrated. It's more streamlined. And yes, you can make fun of me for using MacBook and Android in parallel, but I'm just pushing the limits of the system.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had an iPhone?
So VezTek is the company that I head up. It's an emerging tech company, and the definition of emerging tech changes. A few years ago, that was mobile apps. We did over 600 mobile apps. So when we were doing mobile apps, I would have current and 3 previous versions of iPhone on my desk at all times because that's how we tested apps.
Mm-hmm.
For my personal use, I have not used iPhone.
Oh, you're missing out.
Yeah, I went from HP iPac to BlackBerry to Windows Mobile to Android.
Windows Mobile. That's funny.
I know.
So, what do you think about mobile apps these days? Like iOS and Android apps are are there still many being developed and released these days, or has it jumped the shark, so to
Oh,
speak?
absolutely. Absolutely. So mobile apps is think of it as the presentation layer. The magic happens in the background. So when we talk about blockchain or any other emerging tech, Metaverse is highly likely to be the next, and then you see yeah, big data and artificial and a bunch of other stuff. All of that is going to happen in the background. It's not going to happen on the front. On the front, you still need to input information and give out information to the user, and that's going to be for the short run. For the short term, I think mobile apps and websites type stuff that's gonna be way to do it. Um, Farther down the road, you'll see things like direct. I mean, that's sci-fi stuff. Direct link between human and machine, and other things like that. Smart watches come up with some human and machine interfaces these days. So that's going to keep happening in one form of the or the other until we get to a point where we can directly link human and machine interfaces. So for now, yes, mobile apps are being built. They're not. They are. There's a concept of consolidated mobile apps where one app does a bunch of things. Unlike in the past when we were doing one app does only one thing for several reasons. Interestingly, US was actually far behind in that movement. It was Asia who led the charge in creating those. Kind of like if you have used Uber recently. Within Uber, you can do car service, you can do food delivery, you can do a bunch of other things. There are apps in Asia. There were apps in Asia 10 years ago in which you can do 10 things, 15 things in one app. Your ride hailing app was also your banking app, was also your communication app, was also your social media app, was also your e-commerce app. Recently, I was in Turkey. I experienced something similar there. US is still behind on that trajectory, but it's happening. More apps these days are those kind of apps which provide more value than just one thing at a time, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And where does the metaverse fit into all this for a typical marketer or business owner or consultant? Is this
Yeah.
going to change everything next week, or are we years away? Is it a bunch of hype, and we're not going to see it, change everybody's lives like it's being touted? What are your thoughts?
So, yes to everything that you said. Every technology goes through a hype phase. I've been hearing about blockchain. I first came across blockchain through Bitcoin, I think around 2008 or 9 or 10, probably around that time. I had purchased some Bitcoins and then I used the for the purpose that I needed it. There was some leftover. I left it in the account because the value of each Bitcoin was so small. It was like less than $1, I think, and I just left it there for years. And at one point, I just occurred to me that I owned some Bitcoins. I went back and I saw good value there in that account. It was a pleasant surprise. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't retire on it, but I was happy that day. Its blockchain has been in hype phase for many years. It's not. It wasn't until within the last few years, 2 3 years, 4 years maybe max, that it really start to gain traction. And now we see demand in the industry, and all kinds of industries are looking into it. Metaverse, and within blockchain, then you have things like NFT. You saw recently that there were these 2-bit images being sold for ungodly sums. It's like, why would you do that? But that's the hype phase. Hype is what pushes technology forward. It's needed, but that's not when we need to take it seriously. We need to watch it. We need to watch the evolution of that tech. Um, in my company, I created a formula called emergence convergence formula. It's based on my 20 years of experience of pivoting every 3 to 5 years. And the emergence convergence formula basically looks at when there is a technology has reached that point where now it needs to be taken seriously. And is there enough demand? Is there enough profit margins in it? And that's when we pivot. So based on that formula, it's been true in the last 3 pivots that we did for the company over the last 15 years, roughly. Metaverse, based on this formula, looks like is about 3 years away from becoming a technology that we need to take seriously. for an average person. For us, because we want to position ourselves to provide that service when that time comes, we have already investing about 10 to 20% of our resources, companies' resources, into developing skills and people for that future. But I feel it's about 3 years away. So that's one part of your question. Is it hype? Is it real or not? For now, yes, it's going through that hype phase. We haven't found business cases yet, but I think we are moving towards that future.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is, what are some of the possible business cases that a marketing manager, a business manager, and an agency leader might look into? The first thing that comes to mind is just delighting your user, providing a delightful user experience. You want to demonstrate something, you want to demo some product. Instead of doing it on a computer screen, what if you did it in a 3D environment, right? There are, especially the younger generation now, they are digital natives. They are native to this whole AR, VR type concept. They are very comfortable in that environment. So instead of inviting them to trade shows or inviting them to Zoom calls, if you invite them to a VR experience on their, HoloLens, or on their, some other VR glasses, they are more. I think they would find it more entertaining, more delightful, than just inviting them to good old trade shows and Zoom calls. So that's the first opportunity that comes to mind. Recently, I spoke at a conference where it was very interesting. We were told, well, you're going to be speaking in room number X. And then in this VR environment, you actually walk to room number X and there are people. And you talk to them and you tell people that, if you want to meet for coffee afterwards, let's meet at Starbucks down the road. It wasn't called Starbucks, coffee shop down the road. And then you walk to the coffee shop. It's it's slightly different than going to Zoom rooms, for example, that we do at Metal, for example, every Saturday. It's slightly different. But we were talking to techies. It was a conference full of very young tech people, and they thought it was amazing. I mean, users are the ones who decide if a technology is, if should be taken seriously or not. So in that community, it's already happening, and they're already taking it very seriously.
Mm.
For community at large, business world at large, like I said, we are a few years away from that, and we don't know clearly yet what the business use cases are going to be. People have tried real estate in the virtual world. People have tried office buildings in the virtual world. My office is right next to Microsoft Office in VR. So there might be some value in that. I don't know, but we're moving towards that future.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any marketing use cases for smart contracts and NFTs and play to earn games and all that sort of stuff? Like, what would be some examples of that, if so?
Absolutely. So think of, if you think, we've been talking about blockchain, but we didn't really, um, I didn't, I guess, present the complete picture. Blockchain is think of it is it's the data component in the middle. But that data has to come from somewhere, and then we need to do something with that data, right? So first we collect that data, and that's one side, and then we need to do something with that data. That's the output side. The smart contracts, they come into play on the output side. So for example, based on my data, I want you to take a certain action, and when you do that, you get you earn something, you earn tokens. That is the smart contracts part. The contracts are written between you and me. We agreed that if you clicked on my ad, you get a bad token, for example. That's in the contract. And when you click, that contract automatically gets executed. So no one has to watch you clicking. No one has to verify you clicked or not. And no one has to actually issue the token. So all those things happen simultaneously, automatically when you click. So that's a smart contract part.
Yep. Another
NFT.
example of a smart contract
Mhm.
for our listener is if, let's say, you developed an NFT, it's some sort of creative art project that you did, and then somebody buys the NFT, and then somebody buys the NFT from the other person, you can make money, a royalty, every time it exchanges and changes hands, instead of just only the first time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So NFT is just a ownership, but what happens with that ownership? Does it change when ownership is changing hands or someone is getting rewarded for some action? That's the smart contracts part. So these two things work together. Then you asked about NFTs. NFTs are, if you think beyond those, 2-bit images and board pandas and or board monkeys, whatever it was, board apes, those kind of things. When you think beyond that, there are real business models that are emerging that are based on NFT. Um, a cologne company, colognes and perfumes company from France, they launched an NFT based subscription. So you own and you buy an NFT, and that NFT shows that you are subscribed to this service. And then when you own that NFT, there are smart contracts that kick in and that handle your subscription fee, that handle what you're going to get in exchange for that subscription. The interesting thing is that you cannot buy that subscription. You have to buy the NFT to make that happen. We are working with a large publisher in the US. They own a large number of titles, book titles, and we are launching special editions of their books, and they're tied to the NFT. But in order to buy the NFT, you have to buy their token. So when you do that, when you buy the token, the value of the token goes up. Now I use that token to buy the NFT. Every time NFT changes hands, the ownership changes hands, the publisher, they get something, microtransactions. So there's this whole, and there's liquidity pool in the middle. Every microtransaction, part of that goes into the liquidity pool. The value of the liquidity pool goes up. So you're building wealth over time. So real business models are coming on scene pretty much every day based on these technologies.
Right. And so a business owner who is listening and thinking, well, I know I should get on that NFT bandwagon because, they're even Saturday Night Live skits about NFTs now. Surely I'm missing out. And they could develop an NFT that's a way to subscribe to a service. For example,
Absolutely.
to attend the permissionless conference as a VIP, you couldn't buy a VIP ticket. You had to buy an NFT, and that NFT included VIP access to the conference that year and general admission access forever for as long as the conference existed each year. So that's an example of an NFT that has not a lot of intrinsic value in terms of its artistic value, but it was a utility that, for me, I wanted to attend that conference as a VIP, so it was worth it to me to get the NFT.
Absolutely. Absolutely. About 2 years ago, we launched an NFT for a stand-up comedian out of New York, and we tied the NFT with this comedian's career trajectory. So if you're buying the NFT, you're basically saying, "I have a faith in this comedian's career that it's going to grow."
Mm-hmm.
And as a benefit of one of the benefits of owning the NFT is that you could attend his events without having to buy any other ticket as VIP, any event for X length of time. Actually, it was as long as you own the NFT. So as long you own the NFT, you just go there, you have a little barcode on your phone, that's what they scan, you get VIP access to all his stand-up events. And there were a bunch of other things, early access to things and whatnot.
Cool.
So that was actually one of the first business models that was launched on NFTs.
Did you buy one of those NFTs?
I built it.
Yeah, I
I
know,
kept
but
few.
did you get one? Do you own one as part of the project? Do you still own
We
it?
do. We do.
Yeah.
We still own it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you used it? Have you gone to any of his shows?
I haven't been to New York yet
Okay.
since then.
Okay. Well, that's fun. Okay. So, what would be the most, uh, I don't know, awesome example that you can share of a client project that has, some marketing relevance to it, but also is using some pretty innovative tech?
One example that comes to mind, I was introduced to a client out of Austin, and this person, an elderly gentleman, he was a retired um, art dealer, Chinese art dealer. That was his, he primarily sold Chinese art. And at this point, he's retired and he owns tens of millions of dollars worth of Chinese art, or at least 90% of it is Chinese. We're talking about Ming Dynasty paintings and things like that. Each of those paintings is multi-million dollars, very expensive. That kind of stuff you don't hang on your walls in the house. You put them in environmentally controlled vaults somewhere. So this gentleman, he told me, he said, well, I have all this and it's sitting somewhere. I don't know what to do with it. I'm too old to start another business. I know the moment I die, my kids are probably going to sell it off. I don't want them to sell it off. I want to do something with it. What can be done? So we created a platform for him where, well, first of all, we turned that art, which is very expensive, into NFTs. So now if you are a proud Chinese person, you probably want to own that art. You may or may not have a couple $1 million sitting aside, but you may have, $10,000 or a few $1,000s that you can use to buy a fraction of a painting. Now you can say, I own it's like, me saying I own Tesla because I own a stock.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. So we did that. Then the question was, how are we going to sell these NFTs? If you can't see the art, how are we going to convince you to buy the NFT? We created, so we brought in these photographers who took pictures of the art, but the technology they used, it allows you to see the paintings layer by layer as the artist worked on them. So different layers of paint, for example, you can see all that. It really shows you at a deeper level, much better than looking at a painting in real life, I would argue. And so we did that. We put it on a by invitation only marketplace and an art gallery, which is online. So now users can actually they get invited. They go there, invitation only, and there are events hosted, viewing events, and they can see all these paintings. They can buy NFTs. So his paintings that were sitting there, millions of dollars worth, tens of millions, that weren't doing anything, they actually now are making him money, and he's sitting at home doing nothing, right? And now his kids aren't going to want to sell those paintings because they're bringing home money, even though they're sitting in some vault. I wrote a piece about this project, and it was published in Forbes magazine as one of the early success stories in how NFTs can be used to generate real business models.
That's cool. And do you own some of some NFTs of that art?
No, I don't get to own NFTs in every project that we build. So no, I don't.
You really need to add a cool stuff clause to all your contracts. You
Yeah, I should.
get some cool
I
stuff to
should
go
think
with it.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if our listener or viewer was interested in working with you and your team to develop some innovative tech and to apply things like Web3 to their business and to their marketing, how do they get in touch? How do they find you?
The best way to reach me is via LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/Sani, SANI.
All right. And you have a website though, right?
We do have a website. We barely ever use it
Okay.
on purpose because this industry, yes, we have a website. It's called VezTekUSA.com. Uh, but this industry is very much relationships based industry.
Hmm.
It's not the kind of business where someone goes on Google search, find me a Web3 developer, click buy. It doesn't work like that. So website has become sort of it's there in the background, but it's VezTekUSA.com.
All right. Awesome. Well, Sani, it was great to catch up again. And thank you for sharing your insights with us. And listener, have a great week. Go out there and be innovative. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.